During the 7th generation of consoles, action-adventure games were a dime a dozen, especially movie property ones. So how do you stand out? You make a Star Wars one, where you play as Vader's apprentice, so you are alongside the greatest villain of all time. Also, leading up to the game's release, you put Vader and his apprentice in Soul Calibur 4. Yeah, you have to throw Yoda to sweeten the deal, even though he has nothing to do with your game, but I'm sure it'll be cool anyway. Well, this was the strat LucasArts did, and to be fair, it worked. This particular game sold over 9 million copies and launched a sequel 2 years later. But are the games even any good? Let's take a look at the Star Wars Force Unleashed series. Now, before we get into it, if you could sub to the channel, that'd be tight. But also, whenever it comes to Star Wars stuff, I feel the need to say I am not a diehard fan. I enjoy the movies, I understand what they meant to cinema and pop culture as a whole, and most of the shows they put out are good to okay in my opinion. Again, I say this as a casual. I know I look like someone who grew up to have a collection of saber and droids, but I don't, okay? I have wands. Harry Potter's my Star Wars. My honest thoughts on the Star Wars movies and shows is that they should actually take a break or focus on one project at a time, like one every 5 years for the next 20 years. But that's neither here nor there. I just feel the need to show where I'm coming from, especially when it comes to Star Wars. So with that out the way, Star Wars The Force Unleashed released in 2008 for literally everything that was out at the time, including the N-Gage. And now it's even out for the Nintendo Switch. There are a ton of different versions of the game, but today I'll be sticking to the 360 version, which is kind of the same as a PS3. You eventually play as Darth Vader's apprentice, Starkiller, whose mission is to remain a secret as he hunts down the surviving Jedi from the Purge. The game is supposed to take place in between the first two trilogies and serves as an origin story to the Rebel Alliance and the Galactic Civil War. Even though I am not a hardcore fan, I still do feel fuzzy nostalgia for some Star Wars stuff. The music, the sound effects, and most of all, the opening crawl. I just like the dun. It like punches you in the face. So there couldn't possibly be a better way to start this game. But there is, and the game does it. They actually put you in control of the greatest villain of all time, Darth Vader himself. And he's a tank. Maybe too slow after a while. I had to jump to move a bit faster, but I guess it makes sense. I can't really picture Vader running anywhere. It doesn't look right in my head. This opening level was just super unexpected. The music adds to the mood. The iconic breathing makes you feel more like Vader. And I love that you can actually feel the It's just so cool. I almost felt bad for messing up all these Wookiees, man. You have his full arsenal at your disposal, and you can use the Force to lift and throw things at them. And if there's nothing to throw, which there always is, you can even yeet the Wookiees themselves. Dude, I was so scary. Wookiees were yeeting themselves. I'm not sure what that says about me, that I could sit there all day and decimate the unlimited Wookiees that the game kept throwing at me. Eventually I did decide to proceed, and you find young Starkiller after you battle his papa, and decide to take him away as his apprentice. Then Starkiller's adventure begins. As much as I love this opening level of being Darth Vader, I do feel like the game never really reaches those highs again for me. Usually in games where you do this, where you start out maxed out with all the powers, and then they strip you of the character's power, be it by a flashback or because someone literally took the powers away, you typically come back to the character maxed out to the level you experienced at the beginning. But this is a completely different character. The best character, the greatest character. So it doesn't really matter how much Starkiller gets maxed out, you will never be Darth Vader again. But Starkiller is still a fun, cool character, don't get me wrong. He looks cool, he feels pretty cool, and even sounds cool. Shoutouts to Sam Witwer, aka Deacon St. John from Days Gone.
I will not fail you, my master.
The voice acting across the board is pretty good. They all sound like their movie counterparts. Witwer was even Palpatine, which is really cool.
A rightful place at my side.
Graphics hold up pretty well, and it's a pretty good story, and the characters are represented correctly from the movies. So as Starkiller, you build up abilities and combos to take down a shit ton of enemies. I feel like the earlier levels are harder because you have less at your disposal in terms of attacks and combos, and they just send you a bunch of enemies at you at a time. You have a dash that can help to get away, and you start with the grip ability. It's just super fun to throw shit at people. What's more fun than that? Maybe throw people at people. I do wish that the lock-on system was a little bit snappier. Sometimes what I threw didn't go in the direction I wanted, and I also felt like it takes a little bit longer to set up and aim. So if you're standing there in front of a bunch of guys that are shooting at you, by the time you line up perfectly to throw your thing, half of your health is gone. The force pushing is really fun in a big ass crowd, but early on it feels like there's no defense to being shot by a lot of dudes at the same time. And you're missing any kind of projectile that you don't get until later with the saber throw, which helps. But what I hated the most was getting hit. I know, get good. Design-wise, he just enters in animation, so there's a delay. So while in the animation, you get hit again and again, and there's really nothing you can do. You just feel trapped. You can't jump, dodge, shield up. You can't do nothing. It's like you're in the enemy's combo, kinda. So if you're in a crowd and getting demolished, you can't move at all. And that's when the health bar starts going down fast. But you do get bigger radius attacks that will blow them away, but if you don't have the time to set up to do them, then what's the point? I feel like as the game went along, the game got easier for me because you eventually get abilities and attacks to counteract that. And I feel like the difficulty should be the other way around. It should feel like it's getting harder. But even with all this stuff at your disposal, the hitbox feels off, especially against bigger enemies. More than once, it did feel like bullshit, where I felt like I totally got away, but got hit anyway. And these things felt more annoying than difficult. Looking back, the Arkham system would be perfect for the game. Yeah, it did come out a year later, so this wasn't possible, and hindsight is 2020. Plus, the Arkham system would be perfect for a lot of games. I still think the game is fun though. You get awarded style points for how you take them out. There are grabs you can do. And later the force lightning gets introduced and you can add lightning to things you throw, which is pretty cool. And the combos become more and more intricate as you go along. At the start of each level, there are objectives you can do for points that help you level up. You get 3 individual skill points for force power, gives you upgrades to the abilities like the force lightning and the push and that kind of stuff. Force combos, which gives you more combos, and force talent, which increases health, force bar, that kind of stuff. Scattered throughout the levels are these Jedi holocrons. They can give you skill points. They also give you crystals and sabers and even outfits. You get a new outfit each level and you can change them, which are pretty cool. And you can even customize the saber a little bit. Some crystals even adding some effects to your attacks, like more health upon defeating an enemy, getting more force back, inflicting damage, that kind of stuff. The game is linear, but there are enough corners to hide all these holocrons in, and also add a little bit of replayability if you want to go back and collect them all. What are not so hidden are these boosts that grant you health drain, boosted attack, invincibility, fun stuff like that for a limited time. Because no one knows who you are, you're actually getting attacked from both sides. There are a few enemy types and they really just change their skin, but it's still a healthy amount of different enemies. Fools with guns, melee types, big old walkers like I mentioned before, different kind of rancors, Jedi, guards. There's enough there to keep it fresh. What is missing is the design to make you fight them all. Sometimes you're in the middle of a battlefield between both sides, so everyone can get it, but you don't have to kill anyone if you don't want to. You can just run to the next section. But other than that, the level design is okay. Sometimes you are fighting in a small area with a bunch of dudes, like on a bridge or something, and an invisible wall of force would have greatly helped, helping you not fall. But the levels do feel like Star Wars to me. They do feel like different planets, so that's kind of cool. There is some platforming, but it's not really a point of emphasis. You have a double jump and can dash in midair, and you can even use this for combos. So once you catch up to the Jedi you're hunting, you must fight them. And this was kind of cool. The camera angle changes, making it feel more epic. And the fights are really about finding your opening or finding the best way to cheese the fight. And these fights end in good old-fashioned QuickTime events. Yeah, sometimes it can be annoying because more than once it did feel like I got the right button at the right time, and it simply wasn't as responsive as I wanted it to be. There is quite a bit of fanfare with some fun cameos, especially in one fight. But I must warn you, the last level is so bullshit. They bombard you with so many enemies, snipers, walkers, and big guys. They just throw everything at you at once. There's really no shame in lowering the difficulty here if you want. You can call me whatever you want in the comments, but when stuff like this happens, I get royally pissed and even consider rage quitting sometimes. It's just tedious. It's not really a fun section of the game. I will say it's worth it once you get past it. There are 2 possible endings here, one being the canon one for the series. There are also 2 bonus DLC levels that aren't canon either because you just basically kill everybody, but they offer some fun scenarios to play through. I ultimately like The Force Unleashed. It's not perfect, it has its problems, but offer enough fun scenarios to deserve a recommendation from me. The very first time I played this game was back then for the Wii with the goofy motion controls, but what I have not played was the sequel that released 2 years after. Before we get into that, if you're still here, if you could drop a like for the video and subscribe to the channel, I will even grant you Force powers and love you forever. Star Wars The Force Unleashed 2 released in 2010 for the major consoles, but no N-Gage this time. So you play as a clone of Starkiller who has all of the OG's memories and feelings, but is really struggling to find himself. So Vader tries to make him do his bidding, and he's all like, nah, I don't wanna. So you go out and find the Jedi guy from the first game to help out the Rebel Alliance. Vader captures the pilot lady Starkiller had a crush on in the first game, so he kind of abandons everything to try to go save her. There's a lot of Destiny talk, and that's basically the story of the second game. Yeah, not as strong, as compelling as the first. It's kind of stale, honestly. If you look at the first DLCs, you're doing crazy stuff, so you would expect them to up the ante story-wise, but they didn't. Characters feel wasted, Boba Fett is hanging around, but you never really have an encounter with him, and also Yoda makes a random-ass cameo. You go to Dagobah, but literally don't do anything. You basically go there to take some ayahuasca and find yourself.
You'll let the galaxy die to go find yourself?
And it was all told in a cutscene. You could have had a fight scene there, especially with the visions he was having. I felt like a wasted opportunity. You could have done something cool, maybe fight your dad or something, but no. There are more cutscenes and they're longer than the first game, and the game is shorter. I did get a costume for playing the last game. I missed those times when you would get rewarded for having a saved game of the previous game. Now the thought of giving you anything for free sickens publishers. But as for the second game, I think it did some things better and it did some things worse. Story, yeah, it sucks. It's way worse. Even the voice acting fell off. Starkiller was super emo. He's just yelling and whining the whole time.
I'm not Starkiller.
You get the main abilities out the gate with the push and the lightning, so that's cool. It plays pretty much the same. Everything you can do in the first, you can do here. But the combo system felt lacking, even with you wielding two sabers now. The lock-on snappiness I wanted from the first game is here, kinda, still not at its full potential, but it felt like an improvement. The controls might feel a bit smoother, they're more responsive, especially when it comes to the dodge, and while you're getting hit as well, which was a major problem for me. And you can now deflect shot, which was pretty cool. Plus some Jedi mind tricks, which is also kind of cool. The holocrons returns. There's holocron upgrades, XP holocrons, all kind of holocrons. You use the points to upgrade the abilities. Pretty simple stuff. Kind of lackluster upgrading system. Yeah, they're at least felt, but the game is much easier that they don't really feel needed. So oftentimes I would forget that I had to upgrade because I was just mauling through dudes. He might be a clone, but he's not a stinky clone. He changes outfits like in the first game, and you can change the crystals and sabers again, granting you the extra boosts. Enemies feel less annoying than the first, but they're also more boring. Take these war droids for example. They look big, bad, and intimidating. They even carry the shield around, but it's just super easy to disarm them, so it feels pointless for them to even have a shield. So there's no challenge in taking the shield away. It just feels like an extra step. It would have made more sense if you have to weaken them or stagger them somehow to then take the shield away. So there's somewhat of a trade-off there. It might be less annoying, but the enemies are more boring. And there's not as many enemy types. You can force grab TIE fighters right out the air, which feels really badass. I also like them including the powers in some of the platforming. There's more pushing and pulling stuff around you to help you get to places, gripping fans to stop them, or using the lightning to charge batteries to open the doors. But the level design doesn't really take advantage of that. This is also pretty stale. The game needed more some sort of puzzle solving with the powers that would have greatly helped. They do force you to fight here. You can't just run past everyone like you did in the first, which is good. But they also shrunk the levels a little bit too much in my opinion. So not only is it super linear, there's really nothing to explore. They even took the minimap away because there's really no need for it. It's just go straight. The levels aren't that wildly different from each other either, and they feel a bit uninspired. The music is really good. I mean, any Star Wars music is still good. The quick time events didn't go anyway either, and they're more forgiving as well. They also added a few more things I believe did not work quite well. Maybe it was the execution, I don't know. The first are these falling sections. You're supposed to dodge and you can use the push to get things out the way. It just doesn't feel right, it feels off. There's also no real challenge to it. You can essentially just sit in the middle and force push your way through if you really wanted to. The next one were these clunky chase set pieces. They don't really work because they force you to dash, making it feel choppy because there's a start and stop. He's not going at a consistent pace. It would have been better to just lock him in a running animation or have him fly or something, but the dodging to get away isn't it. The final thing I don't think worked quite well were the boss fights. They took out the 1v1 aspect and instead went for more bigger epic set pieces with longer drawn out step-by-step fights. The problem is they don't feel epic. They feel tedious with endless button mashing and not so demanding. The final boss fight being the worst culprit of this. It just goes on for way too long in a not so fun scenario. I can argue it was the right idea to go epic, but they missed on the execution. I think I kinda understand their thought process. I mean, if you release the same year as Dante's Inferno, Bayonetta, and God of War 3, you definitely need some sort of flair. You gotta go epic. It just wasn't done well. There's challenges you unlock which add some gameplay value. The campaign is pretty short that even with these challenges, you're still looking at about 6 hours of gameplay. The visuals I found to be okay. There is a light and dark side ending. You're not making decisions leading up to this final moment. You guys probably know how much I like Infamous, so maybe like an Infamous system leading up to this moment would have been better. But no, you just make a decision with a click of a button. The light ending kind of left it open for a possible sequel, but 2 years after FU2 released, Disney bought Star Wars and decided to shut down the studio, canceling many projects including Star Wars FU3. I found these games to be good and okay. I will leave it up to you to try to figure out which one's which. They are flawed, but at times very fun. The Starkiller character himself is by far the best thing about it. The potential of his story. Because whether you like it or not, Star Wars is a legendary, expansive world filled with lore and endless possibilities of storytelling. And the Force Unleashed series is a good what-if story. Each game brought some good and bad ideas, and there's a fantastic game in there somewhere if you were to combine the best of both worlds. Thank you guys for watching. May the Force be with you, and remember to always and forever, you do you.
You are a fool to face me alone.
You'll have to kill me this time!